Well, speaking of players, coaches, we're going to be talking to a longtime man or gentleman who's had a reputation of being maybe the ultimate players coach. We're going out to Caronport in the Prairie Hockey Academy, and Lorne Molleken joining us. Lorne, how the heck are you this morning?
Good morning, gentlemen. Everything's great out here.
Well, that's great. Lorne, I have to tell you that one of the things that a lot of people ask me is, do you ever talk to Lorne Molleken? Like, what's he up to? What's he doing now? So maybe what you can do, just kind of to get the ball rolling here, is maybe let our audience know exactly what you're doing out in Caronport at the Academy and how it sort of came about. How does Lorne Molleken become a coach at a hockey academy after years of coaching in the Western Hockey League and in the National Hockey League?
Well, Kelly, first off, I don't know if you can see the T-shirt that I'm wearing. It says Holy Toledo, and after we used to beat the Fort Wayne Comets,
once, Mooner.
It's already starting.
About a year ago, just before that, we had a charity hockey game in Moose Jaw for young Evan Thomas, one of the young boys that we lost in the bus accident with Humboldt, and Lloyd Friesen, who has been a person that's been involved out at Caronport with the high school, with the Bible College for a number of years, asked if I would ever want to get involved in Prairie Hockey Academy, and I really had no interest, in coaching a group of young guys or being involved. I retired, and we'd spent our winters for a number of years down in Mexico, and time went by, and I got a phone call from the president, Justin Simpkins, and I drove out to Caronport. I met with him. I watched a practice. He introduced me to the players, and just listening to him about the values that they teach these young men out here, I wanted to be a part of it, and that's how it all started, and it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Well, that's interesting, Lorne. I remember talking to you. I don't know if you'll remember this conversation or not, but I remember speaking to you about 2 years ago, and I asked you point blank. I said, do you miss it though? I mean, you came out of a Vancouver situation, Saskatoon, and you've been coaching for a number of years. And most of the coaches that I know, they'll tell you, that competitiveness never really goes away. And I said, do you miss being in hockey? And you said something to the effect of, I miss being in hockey, but I really don't have any desire to be in a different city every night and flying all over the world and moving my family. But this seems like a good spot for you then, because, you get to work with young kids, and you've always loved working with kids. You get to coach and be in that competitive environment, but you get to stay in Saskatchewan. So is that a fair read on my part? Was that part of the decision, is those types of situational type things?
Well, I think the biggest reason we came back from the NHL was our family. And that's something that is a staple out here in Caronport and how we approach the players each and every day. And yes, being close to our grandkids is probably the most important thing in the world to me right now. But it's a great place out here. It's a very special place. Led by Justin Simpkins, who is our president, Micah Abbott, the head coach of the 15-year-old team, Eric Robitaille, one of the assistant coaches, Daryl Osborne, who does our analytics for us, and then Scott King, who is an assistant coach with the Moose Jaw Warriors, is our technical director. So it's given me an opportunity, and one of the things that I'm part of a team, and the staff out here is a staff that is totally committed to make the players or these young people better people. And, in my year out here, never do we talk about winning. Winning is important, but that's not the number one focus. The number one focus is developing these young men into better people. And there's so many different programs that the players participate out here. And as coaches, we do too. So as old as I am, Kelly, I'm still learning, and it's been a real pleasure.
These academies, though, I mean, all you have to do is take a look at the number of kids that are drafted in the Western Hockey League, and many of these guys in the higher rounds, they're getting drafted, by the academies. So it's something that you didn't see and hear about too much 10 to 15 years ago, but this thing's really taken on a huge life here the last few years. I mean, and what do you think the biggest reason for that is? Is it the one-on-one time, the fact that they treat hockey almost like a subject in school, so there's more ice time? Is it a combination of all of those things?
I think it's a combination of everything. I think number one, all of the programs have tremendous coaching. The players are on the ice every day. There's weight coaches, nutrition coaches, mental coaches. So you know what? It's like I said, it's a great environment, especially out here in Caronport. I mean, we all know it's a Christian school out here, and the values that these young men learn are very, very important as they move forward in life. And we have a class out here called Humble Strong. And it's taught by two gentlemen, Kirby Court and Stan Peters. Stan is the athletic director out here, but we don't miss these classes as coaches. There's three pillars to Humble Strong, and it's character, learning, and growth. And just watching the players interact with the instructors, it's truly amazing. Last week before we left to go to Calgary, the boys most of the boys had an opportunity to stand up in front of their teammates and talk about what Humble Strong means, what PHA means to them, talk about their family, and it got pretty emotional, and it was pretty special.
Lorne, I really didn't want to get into this with you here today, but this morning we find out that
you're going anyway.
Well, I just wanted to say that I have always heard I have never heard not one player ever say anything but kind things about the way you treated them. And when you come back to places, in fact, I can't read them all, but I look up at the board and there's messages coming from Moose Jaw, there's messages coming from Regina, there's messages coming from Saskatoon. People really appreciate, players' billets. Have always appreciated that you treated the players with respect, and you should be commended for that, because that's maybe not always the case. And now this morning we find out that the Dallas Stars now are the most recent team that's fired their coach because of conduct that maybe isn't quite fitting to their organization's values. And you talked about Caronport here recently, and the commitment is to grow these people into young men. Do you, as somebody that now is sort of not so much on the outside looking in, because you're still involved in hockey, but you're not in the NHL or the Western Hockey League, do you think that it's a good thing that now there's more emphasis being put on the way players are being treated, or do you think maybe the pendulum has swung too far the other way? I mean, I'm asking a guy who's got an impeccable record for treating people well. So how do you look at this whole picture and the craziness going on right now?
Well, I think first off, Kelly, I think, my philosophy, one of my philosophies was always to try to treat the players the way I like to be treated. And sure, I had some hard-nosed coaches, and I've seen a lot of things, and I've probably said and done a lot of things along the way. But in the end, whenever a player would leave the office or we would want to make sure that he's feeling good about himself when he left, because, there's so many pressures on young people today in the outside world. I think that coaches in hockey that I can speak, have to be tremendous role models for these young guys. And out here, like I said, it's a learning situation, even for myself, being around, the rest of the staff and the players and the high school and the college. It's it's great. And I don't think I know there's no spot or no place in the game for any type of racism. And certainly, over the years, you coaches hold players. They try to hold players, accountable, but some of them do it in a different way, and some of them have been very, very successful. So, for me, it's about treating people with respect, and I think when you do that, you tend to get more out of them.
I agree. And I always think about, I get invited every year to come to the Moose Jaw Warrior Golf Tournament. And even after all of these years, Lorne, I mean, how long has it been, for crying out loud? It's been 16 or 17 years since you were there. They still welcome you there with open arms. And, the players, every time that I watch you and the Scott Reeds and the Scott Barnstables and, all of these different players. Blair Atchingham said some kind words at one of their dinners a few years ago. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. You have made a big difference in those people's lives, and the friendships that you've made along the way, I know, mean a lot to you. And now you're doing that for the kids out in Caronport, and I think that's absolutely great. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show here today. Al Dumba has a question for you here before we sign off.
I just have a statement. Mooner, you've come a long way from the Toledo Gold Diggers.
Well, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure running into Al at the Pat games. We talk about a lot of old times. And yesterday, when I was in Regina out at Costco, I ran into Drew Callender. So, it's being a part of a team and having tremendous teammates. It's something that, as a hockey player, you'll never ever forget.
One last question. People want to know, where did you get the nickname Mooner?
Well, it goes back to when we were growing up in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. And at that time, my dad owned the taxi, and he owned the pool room, the billiard hall. And at that time, all the Weyburn Red Wings would go there and play pool. And every Sunday, my dad would sit us down in the barber chair in the old pool room down there. And out come the Clippers, and we'd be right down to the wood. There'd be no hair left. So the players nicknamed my dad Full Moon. I was Half Moon, and my brother was Quarter Moon. And we weren't very happy come Monday morning going to school.
Fantastic stuff. Hey, Lorne, thanks so much. You were the first guy I thought of. When they told me we wanted hockey people and you're hosting, you're the first guy I thought about. And I want to thank you very much for coming on with us this morning.
Well, thanks, Kelly, very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.